The Devil's Soul, Chapter 2, Section 7, Ohio, USA, 1931. And if I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all things to myself. Inscription on the Catholic Church in Cincinnati. Fedor and his father Frank boarded the aluminum passenger car of the newly christened Cincinnati and Lake Erie Railroad. Red Devils, these new cars were called, and this likely excited Fed. He gaped as he heard another passenger referred to him as this, looking at his father for perhaps a reproach, but getting none, as he sat back in the thinly fabricoid-covered seat, his father opposite, the window to his right open, the part that didn't open clean on the inside but clouded on its outside. The clickety-clack of the train on its rails increased in tempo and volume as the train accelerated in the early spring air, still emptied of many odors, nonetheless carried undertones of fresh mud and rich manure, but mostly was like how water has a non-taste, a non-smell that was a smell itself, still a presence filling the outline of scent. His father frowned, but his eyes smiled. Frank tended toward seriousness, but had a playful streak that came out when work was out of the way. He made a half-whispered he of glee as the train reached full speed, and he almost put his whole face out the window to increase the illusion of flying. He saw, seesaw, the joys of youth grounded in maturity, but their outline, likewise inexpugnable in their spirit, would, if unfettered, fall into the form that was a stupid glee enjoyed, a half-fake ascent on a playground game, or a half-imagined flight across the world carried in the bowels of this steel bird flying to Cincinnati. They disembarked from the train and were at once in a mill of people going every possible way. It was hard not to bump into them, but once Frank began walking at a medium gait, a very stiff-backed kind of walk, the head swiveling often without a torso, following the moving stance of a man of authority or self-presumed authority. Fedor found himself able to weave more easily around people. I would imagine perhaps the nervous system is more like a rising wave and falling than an alarm at doing the work for them, triggered slightly into sharp coordination and visual focus by small jolts of looming presence of other humans resembling the intricate interiors of machines with their parts moving in most possible directions and often locked on courses that allow the other parts their attendant courses. I can remember my first incarnation that involved a crowd, and in the middle of that thing of things I remember a subtle fullness creeping up my being, a kinetic satisfaction, the simultaneous safety and dynamism of the herd, and Fedor likely felt this too. And if I be lifted up, the words climbing and descending the arch of a tympanum. Frank had told Martha he thought Fed would make a good pastor. A Seelsorger, his name, Theodore, a version of beloved of God, and his last name a hard-to-translate word meaning care or worry of the existential kind, one who cares or worries in German, Seelsorger, one who worries over souls. Fedor had the ease amongst strangers needed. He was polite and charming and a host when visitors came to the house, but not a show-off, memorized lines of Tennyson recited on demand. Fedor had the necessary pathos, shown in the brooding he did over which watercolors to make a sad scene on a canvas as a younger child. Blue would not do, gray on the bottom where the mourning family was detailed, but a regal yellow sun and marshmallow white background whiter than the canvas, and a pastel blue angelic, not melancholy, these vividities causing the scene below to be that much more morose and poignant by contrast. Frank was taking him on a tour of churches. Frank had visited a church in Columbus as a boy himself, Immaculate Conception. This is where he saw the tympana with John 12:32 on it. Frank's father, Sigmund's cousin, had married into Catholicism, the cousin's husband, a sober Irishman, and when this cousin Agatha gave birth, she asked Sigmund to come to the baptism. Agatha had wanted to name the boy Sigmund, but the Irishman would have none of it. They settled on Seamus. Why not just name him James? J's turned to S's in Gaelic. Well, we aren't speaking Gaelic now, are we? Frank had marveled at the brand new church. I can go back and see the boy's look of wonder on his face and remember that he had heard of another Catholic church built for Germans in Cincinnati where a sentence in German was written over the main altar, and he wanted to see it. It was on the top of the hill overlooking the Ohio River. He wanted to climb its steps and see the river from up high. No one knew Frank's plans except Fed, who he told. The rest just knew he was going to Cincinnati. He didn't tell him probably because they hated Catholics, as Fed would grow up to hate them, whether he went to show his son or because he had some ecumenical streak or because, my theory, he was actually secretly attracted to a supposed Catholic wickedness he never detailed. I have only his words, the ones he whispered to Fed when they finally arrived at their destination and began to climb the 85 steps of the staircase leading up to the church, something famous for its use in an annual Good Friday pilgrimage. The staircase's 20-year-old concrete was only slightly weathered from the annual parade of feet and the seasonal warming and cooling that eventually dooms all concrete. And if I be lifted up, Frank began and then stopped. It was the day before Good Friday. They had been alone on their ascent. The stairs could fit four comfortably side to side. Frank noted this to Fed, asking out loud how much extra cost was incurred to make them this wide. The spring wind was full of spores, already dead attempts at life. The river had cooled the air, and it rushed up into the lower pressured space, emptier and faster moving, and cleaner than the impeded friction air, picking up the grit of the pits of the lower neighborhoods below. The church structure atop the hill up ahead had brick walls that were a deep reddish brown, weathered by years of wind and rain, with twin spires reaching skyward, their crosses visible from the riverbanks below and getting larger the closer they approached. Clean air, Frank said, this time drawing out the words. I can feel Fed's heart increase when I return here, maybe reacting to his father's change in demeanor. Frank never drank, but had moments correlated with religion, where he turned giddy or dark in mood. He said, I will cast you out of my sight as I have cast out all your brethren.